Choosing a game engine is one of the most difficult and important choices you can make as a game developer. What does your game require? But also, in the longer term, what do you want to use? As you learn an engine, you get used to its quirks, its upsides and its downsides. You probably don't want to be switching engines for every project that you work on. All that to say, I've been working on a project using Unity, and after experimenting with Unreal again, I tried porting over all of the work I've done in Unity into Unreal Engine, recreating my entire game from the ground up, just to check if the game ends up being better because of it. And so far, my findings have been interesting. A little background first. I started working with Unreal Engine about 2 or so years ago, working with blueprints, experimenting around trying to make a 3D platformer. I also made some other smaller projects. One of them being the basis for a tower defense game, which I'll get back to eventually. All made in Blueprint, but that tower defense project is where I realized something. Blueprint is an amazing system for scripting your game, but as soon as you start building more intricate systems, it's terribly slow to actually work with. Having to add a node, which takes multiple steps to do, just to do things as simple as adding 2 numbers together. Having to connect your nodes by dragging your mouse all over the place and then disconnecting them and reconnecting parts of the code while testing, it's all rather clumsy and slow. So that's where I moved to Unity, thinking that if I moved into coding, let's stick with C# over C++, which I think was a smart idea at the time. I made some practice projects in Unity to get a decent grasp of how to work with it, and then, about half a year ago or so, I started working on my current long-term project, a open-world-ish action RPG. Because of the way Unity expects you to work a lot more open-ended than Unreal, which can be a good thing, because you're not forced to work in the workflow that the engine forces you into. But at the same time, it means that a lot of things that are just pre-made for you in Unreal, and made in a much better way than I myself could ever do, are simply not there in Unity. Or are extra optional packages that you need to know about and then download and install. So while working on all that, I set my mind to also learning C++, so that I can at least give Unreal another shot. Blueprint isn't really an option for programming beyond simple scripting for me, but if I can go back to Unreal, investing a couple of months into this experiment might have been worth it. And what I found is that the speed at which I ended up making a functioning game on nearly the same level as my Unity project, while also feeling way better and seeming very much less buggy, was absolutely amazing. Part of that is without a doubt that my skills as a programmer in general have grown since I started the Unity version of the game. So, starting with a clean slate, I had a better place to start from, as well as already having a better picture in my mind of what the game would end up being like. Being able to program towards exactly that from the start, instead of adding to increasingly unstable code. But again, this is where Unreal forcing you into their workflow can actually be rather helpful, instead of having to add on my own systems which are decent at best. It allows me to work in a much more structured way. Let me give you an example. In Unity, all your game objects are essentially the same, even the ones in the UI. The thing that makes them different is the components on them. The game objects themselves don't inherently have any code beyond them holding a couple of things such as the transform and the capability to hold components. In Unreal, however, everything is an actor, much like the game objects in Unity, but where Unreal differs is that the actors themselves can have child classes. Unreal itself has the pawn class, which then itself has another child class for a character. There isn't a very big reason to prefer Unreal in this way, I know. I can make children of components in Unity and effectively do the same thing. But the way Unreal has 2 separate hierarchies for actors and components, allowing you to think of your player as player character that can do X, Y, and Z, because it's a player character, and then put some components on that, like a health component or an inventory component, leads to a much more structured way to work. At least for me, compared to having a whole tub of components that I can just mix and match to make my game object with. And all that isn't even to mention the AI systems in Unreal, the material editor which I prefer, which includes post-processing, particle systems, the fact that as an engine, its evolving technology is so damn quick with things like nanites and lumen and a new material system in Unreal 5.2 and so on and so forth. So while rebuilding the game itself in Unreal might have not been the most interesting thing for a devlog ever, hence the lack of actual development talk here, I think thinking about this kind of thing and figuring out what will work for you as a developer and why that is the case is a valuable topic to think about as a developer. Because on the other hand, Unity has things like the scriptable render pipelines, which are much more flexible than the render pipeline in Unreal. The support for 2D games is much bigger. It's generally lower overhead, both for the games themselves, but also for the engine while you're working on it. All valuable upsides to Unity that I just don't really care about all that much in my long-term view on things. I'm likely to make much more use of the things Unreal offers me. So why would I spend another 2 years in Unity on this project, knowing that most things that I learn, I'll eventually have to relearn for Unreal Engine. So after 6 months in Unity and 3 months remaking that same game in Unreal, we're now back where we started. I can keep on making this game, and yes, I'm going to be sticking with Unreal Engine for it. So after a couple of months of devlogs without much progress on the game itself, we're going to go back into it next time. And while I haven't been able to actually progress with developing the game itself, there's a lot of thought I've put into level design and general game design in the time that I haven't been able to progress working on the game. So that is mostly what we're going to be talking about next time, how I'm going to structure the levels. And a very big thank you to all of my Patreons. You can see them on screen right now. If you want to help out supporting the channel, there's a link down below in the description to the Patreon page.